Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Jeanine Pirro Show. Now, here's Judge Jeanine Pirro.
Welcome back to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. Joining us is a very important guest, a pollster, someone who has advised presidential candidates and presidents, including Donald Trump. He's worked with 22 current and former U.S. senators, but he's also worked with international clients like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former prime ministers of Canada and the U.K. And right now, I understand that he is in Budapest. So I want to welcome pollster John McLaughlin. And John, you couldn't be in a more significant place in terms of the news and tariffs and retaliations and non-retaliation. So welcome to the Tunnel to Towers show, John. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the show with you again, Judge. And you're right, because our friend Donald Trump, who you've supported, and I've had the good fortune to work for him ever since he first ran for president and through this last campaign, he's doing what he promised to do. Remember back in 2015 when he went down the escalator at Trump Tower, he said he was running because of the border and because of trade. And he's kept his word. I mean, the one thing about President Trump is when he tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do something. Well, and his voters appreciate that.
Yeah, they do appreciate it. It's all about promises made and promises kept. I think the only issue, John McLaughlin, is people are trying to figure out what exactly he's doing. And I've been fighting from the beginning that, this is not just a trade war. It's a fentanyl war with China and Mexico, but it also is something as simple as leveling the playing field. And a lot of people just don't want to accept the fact that maybe he knows a little about business. And as you say, he's been talking about this for many years. I can remember him talking about this with Oprah Winfrey 30 years ago.
Right. And think about the voter coalition that we created last year. In the last election, we swept the battleground states, as everyone knows, and we won the national popular vote. And a big reason for that was he expanded his coalition where if you voted for Biden in 2020, but you switched to Trump in 2024, a quarter of those voters were African Americans. A quarter of them were Hispanic. Their average age was 35. They were younger. He created a more diverse working class coalition that was really upset with inflation and upset with the fact that they didn't have the opportunities that, previous generations had and previous Americans, and they want better paying jobs. So he's got two things going on here. One is, without a doubt, he wants to bring jobs and manufacturing back to the United States.
Right.
The second thing is the Trump tax cuts are going to lapse this year. They put a time limit on those when they passed them, and that was his signature achievement in the first term, when he had the growing economy because the tax cuts were working, people were getting better wages, better pay. We did a national poll for the Chamber of Commerce in February where 64-20 people want the Trump tax cuts made permanent. And in fact, you've got 71% support no tax on tips, 67% no tax on overtime, 82% support no tax on Social Security. His tax cuts are really popular. And underneath this, people don't realize that the Trump tax cuts, when they passed the first time, Congress put a time limit on them. They lapse. But only half the voters are aware that they're going to lapse.
Right.
And when they lapse, you're going to have the highest tax increase in the history of the United States. So we have to get them made permanent this year. But every Democrat in the House and the Senate is already on record voting against making the Trump tax cuts permanent,
which
means they're in favor of the largest tax increase in the history. That'll put us in a recession, and next year in the midterms we'll lose the House and the Senate unless we get those tax cuts made permanent this year.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
This episode is brought to you by GMC. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the GMC Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit gmc.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
And now, 2 pigeons bemoaning the fact you can choose the TV you want with DirecTV.
So now they can pick out their favorite entertainment when they sign up and save money?
You mean if you like sports?
You can get a sports pack.
What about entertainment?
Entertainment pack.
It's like finding an old pizza with your favorite toppings, which for me would be pineapple and toenails.
Pineapple?
Pay for the TV you want, not the TV you don't. Genre pack starting at $34.99 a month. Visit DirecTV.com for more information. New residential customers only. Local channels vary by market. Services renew monthly unless you cancel online. Credit card required. Restrictions apply.
And you know, the interesting thing is that, as you say, a lot of people don't realize that they're going to sunset, expire. But I do want to focus a little more on the tariffs. You know, a month ago, no one was even talking about this. And now countries are lined up to do trade deals with the United States. And when President Trump said, you know, he's doing the 90-day pause and now we're going toe to toe with China, you know, my sense of this is it was always about China, because China, it seems to me, was always the end game. You know, they can bully us, but in the end, I think that if we get manufacturing back to the United States, then we'll be in a position to never have to rely on these other countries again to bring manufacturing back. And someone said yesterday, you know, we don't want manufacturing back. Are you kidding? We lost 90,000 plants in the last 10 years. So, I mean, what's your thought about that?
Well, you know, I was in the Oval Office with him back in 2020 in March. It was March 11th. And I'd flown back from Europe from seeing clients, and we had to go meeting. And as we're walking in, myself and the other people from the campaign, we had a series of new polls for the president. And he says, he comes out from behind the Resolute desk. He says, I think I have to shut travel down to Europe tonight because of COVID. And I said, that's too bad, because these polls said you were going to win re-election. And all the you know, the whole 2020 campaign, what he had to go through to try to make sure we had supplies, we had pharmaceuticals, that the supply chains held up. He doesn't want to go through that again, and he doesn't want to see any other American president have to go through that, where, you know, Americans basically can rely on, you know, our own industries, our own businesses, whether it's the chips that you make computers with, or whether it's you know, healthcare equipment and pharmaceuticals. So I think what President Trump's doing is thinking long term, and you know, it's really short term when it comes to China. Is like, you know, the countries that we're going to deal with, that we have good relations with, whether it's Japan or South Korea or Vietnam, they're already talking about doing trade deals. The EU, Hungary, Prime Minister Orban, who's President Trump's friend in Europe and has supported him since 2016, his country vetoed retaliatory tariffs against the United States that the EU is going to negotiate as well as all these other countries.
And that's where you are right now, right, John McLaughlin?
Yes, I'm in Budapest, and that's good. And the good part is, when you think about it, is Donald Trump. You know, President Trump, he loves to negotiate. He's a businessman. He's not a politician, and his interest is in the American people, and making sure that I say he's the blue collar billionaire. He's the guy that takes care of the blue collar workers, the average person, taxpayers. He wants to make sure that Americans basically are not exploited and taxed for the benefit of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So, he's taking care of that on behalf of the voters that voted for him and the whole country.
Yeah. And I think that going forward, well, let me ask you, going forward, what does he have to do to maintain a positive rating? What do Americans want from him going forward?
Well, basically, they want a good and growing economy. And that's why the tax cuts are so important, because if you have growth in the economy, we'll win the midterm elections. You'll have a Congress that supports you in making sure we get good trade deals with our partners. And they'll help them also keep, the Middle East at peace and Israel safe. And hopefully, the war in Ukraine and Russia, hopefully that, they'll go to peace talks and there'll be a settlement there. So Donald Trump has a lot of challenges. I mean, Biden left this guy with a real mess. But as people see progress, like we're seeing in our polls, the number of people concerned about the border is dropping because he's solving that problem. And he didn't need Congress. He just did it with executive orders and enforced the law as it is. Mm-hmm. But the key thing is George W. Bush in 2002 was able to defy the midterm jinx because after 9/11, he had passed a tax cut and pumped the economy full of support and resources so that you had a growing economy, so that we ended up picking up 2 Senate seats and 8 House seats in the midterms. And that was usually it doesn't usually happen. Mm-hmm. So President Trump could also do the same thing. If we can keep the economy growing, we can actually strengthen our House majority and our Senate majority so that you can have a safer, more secure United States, and that would be great. But,
and what's interesting, what's interesting too is we're seeing the Supreme Court jump in and say to some of these rogue judges, hey, cut it out. You don't have the right as a low-level judge to decide to stop the president, which is kind of very unusual for the Supreme Court to come out with things like that. Anyway, I want to thank John McLaughlin for being with us this morning on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show. John McLaughlin, have a great day. God bless.
Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. And up next here on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show, I'm going to be talking with an author. His name is Tim Elmore, and he wrote a book about diversity in the workforce. And I'm talking about generational diversity, like what's with Gen Z and how do we work with them? Can't wait to talk with him. Coming up right here on the Red Apple Audio Network.
It's the Judge Jeanine Show.